Today we're diving into a topic that a lot of us can relate to, and that's a feeling of leadership fatigue. It's a challenge and it's really important to face it head on. So if you've been feeling the weight of your leadership responsibilities, you're in the right place. We're going to talk about some strategies to tackle this. So let's jump in. First of all, what is leadership fatigue? Is it just feeling tired? No. It is a bit more significant than that. It's a feeling of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion that usually comes about from feeling like you are the one that is making the decisions and you are responsible, and needing to make the right decisions and feeling and bearing that responsibility yourself. Some signs and symptoms to look out for include a lack of motivation. So that feeling that you would get where you'd normally be quite engaged and ready to go and energized, perhaps feeling like you don't want to go to work, or even a feeling of disengagement. So when a team member or colleague is talking to you, you sort of feel on the outside and that it's not really impacting you, what they're saying, even if it's significant. Like you're observing but not invested in the situation. Another sign is increased irritability. This will depend on your temperament, but I know for me, it takes quite a bit for me to feel or show that I'm really frustrated or irritated. So if I was snappy or feeling quite grumpy with my team, I would know that I needed to step out and take a bit of a break or get a breather, because that's not normally how I would respond to a situation. And if it was compounding or it took very little to get me to that point, I'd know that there was something else going on there. Another sign is decreased decision-making abilities. So in a leadership role, you're often at the point where you need to make decisions really quickly, you need to move things along at pace, and you'll know what that pace is for you in your role. However, I think one of the signs for me would be if I was struggling to come to a decision quickly. So something that was relatively straightforward, if I was agonizing how I was writing or structuring something that would normally take me 5 minutes, then something else was happening. And you'll know what your tipping point is too. What it is that really shows up that makes you think, oh, normally this would be really easy for me. What's going on? Why is it taking so long? That's another sign. Persistent exhaustion is another one, or that overwhelming tiredness feeling. Feeling like even with a really great night's sleep and being early to bed, you're really still tired in the morning when you wake up is a pretty big indicator that something else is happening for you. I would say with a lot of these signs and symptoms, if they were progressing or continuing for a long period of time, I'd also like to have a checkup with my GP, because these are quite serious signals. If you know your benchmark that something else is happening and you are really struggling with fatigue or feeling like you are really exhausted. So what are the causes of leadership fatigue? I think that pressure to make decisions and make the right decisions for your team can be quite mentally draining. If you have a role where decisions that you make actually impact on people or on finance, so perhaps you're responsible for a certain financial output, and you know that a decision you make could impact on other people or it could be a financial one, I know that those particular decisions do weigh quite heavy on me, and I do feel a strong responsibility to do the right thing for my team and for others. And often these decisions have quite long-term consequences and can be an element of risk. So you might be making a decision and you really don't know what the outcome could be, and you know that it could go either way. Having to consider the consequences or long-term toll a decision that you are making and you are responsible for can really take a mental toll on you and how you're feeling. Another cause of leadership fatigue can be insufficient delegation. If you're trying to do everything yourself because you think it's faster, or you're uncomfortable about delegating out, this can lead to burnout and exhaustion. The other reason is a lack of work-life balance. So I know there are often times where as a leader you will take on more than what you can do in a day, and you could find yourself working a little bit later. However, it's when this becomes normalised and you're always working a lot later, or you're catching up on work in the weekends, that it really does take a really big toll on not just your health but also the people around you. I have definitely had situations where I found myself working a lot more and taking on probably too much. It is challenging to balance a big role in leadership and looking after yourself, and also ensuring that you have that balance. This will often come through working long hours, checking emails on your phone, even when you're on leave, continuing to kind of work on the side and keep track of things. And it is quite self-fulfilling, because if you are known as someone who's always available, even when it's 8 o'clock at night, people will keep coming back to you because they know you're going to respond. So there is an element of you needing to take control of that so you don't burn out. So what can you do? What are some strategies that you can put in place now to ensure that you don't get burnt out? The first one is looking after yourself. And this is a really obvious one, and a lot of people talk about it, but it is really important. And that means getting sleep, making sure that you get a bit of exercise, making sure you get fresh air if you're working from home, taking breaks during the day to just recharge your mind. I do this through getting up really early in the morning and prioritizing exercise. For me, that's how I reset myself. I give myself a bit of mental space where I'm not working. I'm doing something that makes me feel good, and I know that it sets me up really well for the day. It does tend to eat into my sleep time because it is early in the morning. However, I know the payoff is worth it. I also know that I want to prioritize spending time with my family at the other end of the day. So by making sure I exercise in the morning before anyone else is awake, it gets that part done, and then I am available to be with my family after work. I also schedule my day pretty heavily, so I make sure that I have my calendar full of what I need to get done for that day, which includes not just the meetings I need to have, but the reminders of the tasks I need to get done too. So that way I've prioritised my day in order of what's really important. I also try not to have meetings that are for an hour, because I've found that if I book an hour for a meeting, I'll take the hour. However, if I book 30 minutes, I will get it done in 30 minutes. So often it's a psychological thing, and it also means I can fit more in. But the idea for me is that if I get my day really full and I keep going and I take little micro breaks where I'll go and grab a coffee and get a wee bit of fresh air and then come back into it, I then know I don't have to work at night time where I really want to spend time with my family. There's always exceptions to this, but this is what I've found has worked for me. I've definitely had times where I haven't done a very good job of it, but now at 17 years in with leadership, I really feel like I've got a routine and structure in place that really works well for me. The other strategy is effective delegation. As we talked about, delegation or lack of delegation really impacts on your workload and how you can get through all the work that you need to so you don't burn out. Being able to effectively delegate so that you're not just instructing people to do this task, you're giving them the information and helping them take hold of it themselves. So in a way that promotes a shared responsibility model. So they feel ownership over it and they feel like it's their project, not just a task that you're allocating to them to do because you're too busy. It's being really mindful about what you're delegating to. There will be team members without a doubt that can do things 10 times better than I can, and it's learning and understanding where your strengths and weaknesses lie and what your team members' strengths and weaknesses are, so that you know what you can give them and what they're really good at, because then they do a better job than you do. It also promotes skill development for your team and team engagement. It does require a balance of trust, communication and empowerment to ensure that this is done effectively. It's always a nice feeling when I ask a team member to take on a project for me and the reaction is, "Oh, I'm so pleased that you asked. I've been really wanting to do this." They feel like you're giving them something that they really want, not that you're just dumping something on them. The other tip is time management. I've talked about how I schedule my day. I do jam my schedule really heavily. However, I do always put in there 15-minute breaks where I'll go round the corner and grab a takeaway coffee and walk back kind of slowly, depending on what's next. I think the change of scene is what sort of switches me so that I move on to the next thing that I need to get done feeling a bit fresher, and it means that I can sort of work at pace throughout the day with limited breaks. But it really depends on how you work. You probably want to try lots of different tactics to see what really resonates for you and how you like to work. I know there's lots of models that you can pick up. Time boxing is one of them. This is where you break up your work into focused intervals. So it could be that you go with the 25-minute box where you go, okay, for 25 minutes, I'm not having, like, emails are shut off, there's no messages coming through, and I'm just really focused on this one piece of work. And then after 25 minutes, a timer goes off, have a quick micro break, and then you go into something else. So there's lots of different strategies that you can do to organize and structure how you work. There's some really great methods and research on different ways to organize your day or structure your workload. The key thing is to be organized enough so that you can see your day. Okay, what's the top 3 things I absolutely have to get finished today, or I know I'll be here at the end of the day finishing those off. I always try and tackle those early in the day because it means that if something else comes up, I've got room. I know that I've got space there where I can spend time on anything that arose and not have to keep working after everybody else has left. Now let's talk about thriving. So you might be feeling fatigued, but what can you do and set up so that you can keep pushing through and your team feel like that they're in an environment that's really supportive and not also causing them fatigue? Number 1 is fostering a really supportive environment. So that's an environment where you encourage these methods of self-care in your team too, and you normalize it. So it could be that you're all trying to work on a project. So you all do a time boxing project where you all work on it really heavily, concentrate really hard, and you each have a piece that you're doing for 25 minutes. And then you all have a 5-minute break together and then plan out what's next. There's lots of different methods that you can use as a team that just encourages that way of, okay, yep, we know we've got this work to do, but how can we do it in a way that makes us all feel like we're managing what we have on our plate? I think also encouraging open conversations about how people are feeling and their workload and their stress, and remembering that unfortunately we don't just turn up to work where, oh, it's all about the work, 100% in, there's nothing distracting me, I'm all in. There's always something happening in your life that will be in the back of people's minds, and you can't ignore that because it will impact how they feel and what version of themselves that they bring to work that day. Acknowledging that, and that people are putting their lives on the back seat when they come to work and they're trying to put their best foot forward, and making sure that they have the resources and support to do that. So if they are feeling overwhelmed, that they have a leader that wants to hear it and wants to help them and wants to put structure in place for them if there's points in their life where they may need a bit more support, or they may need more time off, or whatever it is that's happening. I think you have to create an environment that feels safe for them to be able to acknowledge that and to be able to speak about it openly. And it's all very well talking about how you need to do self-care. You actually need to show that you also really care about looking after yourself, and then your team will feel comfortable to have that themselves. The other way that you can continue to sort of keep going when you're tired or when your team's tired is to make continuous learning part of the workplace. So while it might feel like, oh, continuous learning, so we're going to ask people to keep training and keep learning new things even when they're really tired, it's more about that, what motivates you. So if you're doing the daily grind and nothing's changing and you know what is expected of you and it's kind of the same cycle every month or every year, it can feel quite flat. So this is about, hey, there's other opportunities out there. What is it that you think you want to learn? What is it that we can do to grow you in your role? And making sure that those are available for people, whether it's through internal courses or resources, or even if you have funding, like external conferences and things, they can actually be quite motivating for people and just change things up and give you a fresh perspective. And often if you go to a workshop and you're listening to people that you don't normally engage with, talking about a topic that you're interested in learning more about, you go away feeling quite invigorated. And then the challenge is always, how do I actually put this in place in real life? I find that quite a challenge, but I do like the break and the new perspective to keep me going and keep me engaged in my work. I also do this in my own time. So like I said, I get up early and I exercise, and part of that exercise is on a treadmill, and I'll often watch YouTube videos on things that are affecting me within that week. So it could be that there's a person hour issue issue that I'm dealing with that I'm sort of feeling a bit stuck with. And I'll often do a bit of a search on YouTube or wherever for videos about how people handle those situations. And it just gives me some new way of thinking about it I hadn't thought of or I hadn't tried, and just helps me get unstuck. And I'll do this for a lot of different situations. I also listen to audiobooks when I'm in the car and I want to hear somebody give me a bit of inspiration. And the last thing is seeking professional support. As I mentioned, if you're feeling fatigue and you're not motivated and you're really tired and it goes on for a really long period of time, you might need to see somebody for professional help. But it could also be just a mentor that you go and you say, look, I'm just feeling quite tired, you know, all of this responsibility in my job is making me feel like maybe I'm just not that engaged in it at the moment. And often they will have had a situation that's similar, or they can talk it through with you, or just make you see it from a new perspective. And that could be a coach, a mentor, somebody clinical. It's really what you're comfortable with to help you get through. There's also a lot of online coaches and counsellors that can help too. An outside perspective can just make you think about things differently, see what's important and what might be holding you back, so that you can go back and feel great again. Leadership fatigue is actually quite a common challenge for leaders, but it isn't insurmountable. There are lots of things that you can put in place to make sure that you're looking after yourself, supporting your team, delegating well, and structuring your day so that you know what you need to get done in a way that helps manage your time. I think taking care of yourself is not a luxury. It's actually essential to being a great leader. You need to be able to give a lot of energy to other people when you're in a leadership role. So you need to be able to have that energy in the first place to give it out. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe, please give me a comment, maybe what you do to help look after yourself and not feel overwhelmed with leadership and fatigue. Until next time, take care of yourselves and see you in the next one.